side by side. Yay, he's recording. uh, so basically, this approach trades space for time. Rather than having the two eddy covariance equipments, you compare 24 hours apart measurements. That means that I'm going to compare measurement that happens at 7 in the morning from this day to the day plus one to the next day under similar environmental conditions. That could be similar wind speed, temperature, radiation, precipitation, etc. This has its own flaws, but it's a good alternative for emerging networks that do not have the extra set of equipment. Uh, and this approach has been used actually here for the AmeriFlux network. Here, this is study by Andrew Richardson and colleagues where they use it. Then it was replicated by China Flux, this consecutive days approach. And this approach has been also really versatile because it has been used for soil respiration measurements and also for carbon fluxes in buoys in ocean conditions. So I think that for an emerging network and a small network can be really useful, this approach. And we apply it to the different sites in Mexico. So what we did is using 15 study sites across Mexico for different kind of ecosystems that goes from forest, tropical dry forest, temperate forest, also shrublands, open and closed, coastal ecosystems, grasslands, and some urban systems. What we found now, the results. Here, I'm just gonna share with you a little bit about the characteristics of these uncertainties. Here you can see the distribution of these random errors or uncertainties in measurements are centered in zero. They have a large peak in zero, and they have long tails. Mostly, those are like a Laplace distribution rather than a Gaussian distribution. And this is for China Flux, but the same happens in AmeriFlux. And I'm just going to put some examples of MexFlux sites. This is El Mogor, that is an open shrubland. This is Alamos, that is an old-growth forest in Sonora. And also a coastal system. This is a mangrove that was monitored in the Yucatan Peninsula. So basically, good news is that the characteristics of the random errors are similar across networks. That's a good thing. But also there are some relationships that are similar across networks. For example, here I'm showing that the uncertainty in measurements increases as the magnitude of the fluxes increases. This is for net ecosystem exchange of the flux of CO2. Similar relationships were found for MexFlux, China Flux, and AmeriFlux. And this is also is replicated for the energy fluxes for sensitive and latent heat. Yes, there's going to be differences in the parameters of the linear regressions, but the patterns are similar or the same. So something that is well known for micrometeorologists is that, at least using the eddy covariant technique, is that the uncertainty under low wind speed conditions are higher, and they are decreasing as the wind speed is increasing. And this is something that has also been that is also seen for China Flux, AmeriFlux, and MexFlux. So just a brief summary of this. Is that the uncertainties in these measurements, both for carbon and energy, are similar. Are similar across networks, at least with this consecutive days approach. I know that this is not the ideal conditions, but this is a good alternative to report these uncertainties. Then another thing that we can say here is that we can develop transfer functions, that those are relationships of uncertainty versus another environmental variable that can be air temperature or some kind of radiation to estimate or assign uncertainties in prose-based models. And also we can use these characteristics of the distribution of the uncertainties as information, a priori information for maximum likelihood of Bayesian or machine learning exercises. Okay, almost there. Why are we doing this? Why did we do, yeah, you understand me, this assessment? And this is basically because we want to increase trust among the network. That means MexFlux, basically that the PIs among MexFlux know that we are doing things right, but also increase the trust across networks. Basically, this is like a exercise for transparency of how we are doing things in MexFlux. And this can be expanded to another smaller networks, like in South America, Africa, or other smaller that do not have the magnitude of AmeriFlux. What else are we doing? How am I doing with time? Okay, what else are we doing? So I'm going to share a little bit of the work in progress that we have in MexFlux. And I'm going to do a shout out to Carlos Dominguez and Susana Alvarado because they are doing an evaluation of light use efficiency models for estimating gross primary productivity in low latitude ecosystems, basically in Latin America, right? um, yeah, this is what they are doing. And another effort that we are doing is building databases. And the first effort that we are doing is building MexFlux S, that is a soil respiration database for Mexico, because you can see on my right, probably your left, the distribution of the soil respiration database across the American continent. And you can see that Mexico is not very well represented in there. And there is a reason. I mean, on the map of Mexico, you can see the points where we actually have measurements of soil respiration, and there is a lot. However, here we have the language barrier, basically because these measurements have been reported in Spanish, and probably they have not been incorporated to the soil respiration database because of that. So here the opportunity, not only for MexFlux, but also for Latin America, is that there is a lot of information that is shared in Spanish and not in English, and probably we are not taking that into account because of the language barrier, right? What else are we finding with this database? And this is interesting because what we have found, and on my left, your right, here you can see a work of Yinxi Yan in 2018, where they use the monthly soil respiration database that is the put together information across the globe. I mean, this is a global study. And they found that they have like a threshold of 27 Celsius degrees for this temperature relationship to reach a plateau. However, on my right, that is your left, this is the MexFlux data for soil respiration. And basically, we are, let's say it like that, putting the other half of the bell, of this bell distribution. So you can see in here that with temperature, so as temperature is increasing, so the soil respiration is decreasing, not following this, this exponential relationship of Lloyd and Taylor. So this is something good, and you can see. I'm gonna take this because gosh, I did the 2 feet. This is the relationship that Yinxi Yan proposed. Different parameters, right? Because I'm parameterizing that with MexFlux data. But the equation on the top is the canonical form of this exponential relationship of respiration and temperature. And clearly, you can see that this is not something that you have seen in textbooks, right? It doesn't fit well for the Mexican data. And besides the self-promotion of this database, and we have found the take-home message that I would like to say is that exploring data from underrepresented places in the American continent, I think that we can find different thresholds, different relationships that we have seen before. And with that, I would like to say that Latin America is an extremely unexplored natural laboratory. And there is a lot of data in there that has not been explored. And how can we increase collaboration? And this is a shout out for the breakout session that is happening tomorrow for the TAFE, the Taller de Aprendizaje de Flujos Ecosistémicos. Basically, that's the Spanish version of the Flux course, because I think that now we can train the next generation of edicovariant scientists or flux scientists in Latin America. Thank you very much. That's it. Well, we're doing time. Okay.
All right, we have time for questions. Remember to wait for the microphone if you do have one.
Yay.
Yeah.
That was interesting. The different respiration response to temperature. Do you interpret that as a moisture limitation at that end? Is that how you think of it?
So it is a combination of moisture because, I mean, it's like you are in the 30 to 40 Celsius, right? So those are under dry conditions. But for example, also that the summer, the rainy season is also in there. So I need to explore more on that. This is a work in progress that we are just analyzing this data. But please reach out if you have more ideas on how can we use this data. We are open to share this data. Yeah, and increase the representation across the American continent. Yay! I know that everybody's sleepy because we just have food. Don't be shy.
Hi, thank you. I have a question. What are the implications of becoming recognized by the Mexican government? What does that, do you then get financial resources, or what does that look like for the future of MexFlux?
Yeah, for MexFlux, having that recognition is that we can have access to another grants. Being a national laboratory in Mexico is different than being a national laboratory here in the States. So basically, we can ask for grants or to the Mexican NSF. But for bigger budgets, because that will be for a national lab. Yeah, so that I think that's it.
Thank you.
Please don't be shy. A raise hand. You want to do it in Spanish?
I'm afraid I cannot, but that's a relevant comment because one question I have is related to the language barrier as far as reporting data into databases. Do you think that depends on whether a database is formed from a meta-analysis, and so they're just not finding like Spanish language articles at all? Or is it that if data are collected in an independent database, people from non-English speaking countries are just not incentivized to check their data into that database? Like, I appreciate your thoughts on that situation.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And well, there is a language limitation because, I mean, here in the States, English speakers, right? And we're used to communicate science in English. However, in different countries, we also have these research journals, but in Spanish or in your native language, right? And usually that information is not taken into account because, well, probably most of people in here, we only speak two languages, your native language, and English, right? Or if English is your native language. I know that there might be people that speak more than two languages. And yeah, I mean, basically, this is not, I think this is my personal stuff, is that we haven't reached out people that have another language. That's a skill. Actually, speaking English is a skill for me, at least as a Mexican, you know. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your questions or I use babble. Yeah, we can reach out later. Sorry. kind of nervous because English is not my native language, you know? Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ngoc Nguyen.
Seen it? Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Ngoc Nguyen. You can say my name by knock the door. So that's how I tell people to pronounce my name. And I'm turning into my 4th year PhD at UC Berkeley. And today I will show everyone that there's an unaccounted carbon loss across global dryland. So why I decided to study about eddy covariance and flux? So simply, eddy covariance, GPP, and ecosystem respiration has been used for higher level model development and validation. So they are really important because they are the ground-based observations that have been used to train the model. So we need to make sure that the GPP and R equal obtained from the partitioning methods are correct. However, we notice something is missing in the partitioning methods. So this is the equation that model ecosystem respiration as an exponential function of temperature. So the R equal here is model as a function of temperature. What's about water? What's about in drylands? What's going to happen there? And what about non-steady state process that eventually could be averaged out by the moving window to calculate the reference respiration? And probably that extreme process will matter under climate change. So we found out that there's a missing process. And so in water limited ecosystem, yeah. Okay, great. So we found out that in water-limited ecosystems, vegetation and soil microbes rely on the stochastic and discontinuous rainfall to regulate ecosystem carbon dynamics. And if we look at the half-hourly GPP obtained from the nighttime partitioning method, this is a site in Spain. Have anybody noticed anything a bit weird here in GPP? Well, actually, GPP is in some places are actually negative. So what is it, and what actually caused the model to not being able to capture the GPP during this process? So let's come back to the original of the nighttime partitioning method, which model R equal and then calculate GPP based on the difference. So if we look at the half-hourly NE from the same site, we have R equal modeled by the nighttime partitioning method as a black line here. And in the green color points, we also see that the model highly underestimated R equal. And it's corresponding to the period where we have the rain pulse. So the missing process here is actually rain-induced microbial respiration pulses, that every time we have rain after a very long dry period, the microbes somehow get very excited and then they decompose carbon, they emit a lot of carbon dioxide, and actually they follow the initial increase and then the decaying rate, like in my cartoon figure. So rain-induced carbon dioxide pulses, here's a little background of that. It's officially documented in Birch 1958, and it has been observed to be significant in individual flux tower in dryland. For example, in US Tansy, in Spain, the site managed by Max Planck, in Chihuahua Desert, we observe a lot of that. However, there has not been a global synthesis, characterization, or quantification of their contribution. And we know that the precipitation regimes will probably be changed under climate change. So imagine now we have a tool that could help us correct the underestimated flux and also including meaningful process into the models. That would be really awesome, right? We can avoid the negative GPP and the underestimated R equal. And we would like to introduce a tool called FluxPulse, which is under preparation for submission. So FluxPulse is designed to be a FluxNet add-on tool that can detect and bias correct for rain-induced carbon pulses. The first one, in order to bias correct for the underestimation, we need to know where and when they happen. So we need to detect the rain-induced carbon dioxide pulses. The easiest and probably the most tedious way to detect is to detect by eyes. And I did that. We label by eyes across 34 global dryland sites over more than 300 years among 7 million data points to identify nearly 2,000 pulse events. And this allows us to define pulse characteristics across all sites. So this is a conceptual diagram showing the dynamics of carbon flux during the pulse event. And based on the similarities of many pulses, we are able to define pulse characteristics such as the length, the intensity, the size of the pole, whether they are a net carbon sink or net carbon source, and more importantly, we are able to quantify their decay rate, which is pretty important characteristic. We found that the rain-induced carbon pulse actually are important to the net carbon dynamics by showing that they contribute about 20% to annual ecosystem respiration and about 10 to 15% of the annual net ecosystem productivity. Here, I plot the composite pulse across all the sites. And as you can see in here, we got US Tanzi, which has the highest pulse intensity, the highest response to rain pulse because of high GPP. And then rank number 3 is actually the site managed by Max Planck in Spain. We also have the site in Chihuahua Desert managed by Marcy. And when we normalize all of them by the pulse intensity, surprisingly, we can come up with a decay rate for all the sites. And this could have meaningful application into a high-level ecosystem model. So labeling pulse by eyes is great, but absolutely it's not scalable. So instead, we use very simple machine learning method. We use random forest binary classification to detect the pulse. We label 0 for non-pulse event, label 1 for pulse event, and if we feed the right variables, then they will break really properly. We show that the major events, the major pulse event, which is about 70% of all pulse, are being very accurately detected by the random forest. Recall here is actually the proportion of predicted pulse over the number of actual pulse, and it can reach to 75% for a certain pulse size group. And the major events are actually the pulse event with the net carbon more than 0. So that means they are actually a carbon source. We also found that pre-pulse condition is pretty important for the machine learning to detect the pulse by indicating that pre-pulse NEE and pre-pulse evaporative fraction are pretty important here, like ranked among the top 5 most important. But precipitation is not, because not every rain event will lead to rain pulse. So flux pulse only needs 3 fundamental measurements from eddy covariance, which is NEE, latent heat, and sensible heat, to automatically detect the pulse event. And this can have many applications in which we can bias correct for the flux, or just if you don't want the pulse to mess up with your own study, you can just detect it and then eliminate that. So now we come to bias correct GPP and R equal during rain-induced carbon pulses. So we simply add a correction factor to the original nighttime method that take into account the decay rate and the initial shoots in R equal. Here's some example of how the bias correction is performed in various sites. You can see your familiar sites here. The red line is the bias corrected. The black line is the nighttime partition R equal. And the poise is NEE. So we also want to develop Flux poles version 2.0 to answer these specific questions, such as do rain-induced poles can occur in other biomes? Do they only occur in drylands, or they occur after every dry period? What's about after drought or long period of soil dryness? So Flux poles version 2.0 aim to detect and bias correct for rain-induced carbon poles in all biomes, not just drylands. And we want to make the code and the data set be publicly available. So yeah, watch out for our publication. Here's a little idea on using large language model, to be specific, ChatGPT 4.0 performance on the Spain side ES-LM2. You can see that the red color is actually the polls event. The left one is the manual label, the right one is the LML label, and actually they do surprisingly really good. I just tell them specific rules to label the polls, and they give me this graph. So I think it's really fascinating that we can use the current technology to help us to solve ecological problem. Yeah, and finally, thanks everyone for your listening. And this is a little advertisement for our journal club, which has been held since 2018. Bi-weekly, this is a great place for people together to come discuss any paper you are interested in, get to know your peers. So please scan the code to go to the Twitter account. And yeah, thanks everybody for your listening.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to move right to our next talk, which will be by Jake Searcy from the University of Oregon.
这么看把眼会看坏的，坐着去，自己搬个凳子坐着。
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Searcy. I'll admit I'm a bit nervous for this talk, so I'm not a flux scientist. I'm a data scientist. So I might say something that are a little bit silly, but I would appreciate, Lieb was said earlier, direct but professional feedback if I say anything too silly. But a little bit why I'm here. So a little while ago, me and some of my collaborators listed below went out for this project called CARBS. So convergence to accelerate research on biological sequestration. And so I'm definitely part of the convergence part of this. And one of the main things we were interested in is how can we use sort of machine learning tools, which I focus on, to kind of give land managers everything they need to sort of quickly account for carbon fluxes when planning. And a very natural thing that came to us, well, we need to look at remote sensing, and we'd like to do it as high resolution as possible and as comprehensive as possible, which led us to look at AmeriFlux data and the literature. So that's what brings me here. And to give you some context of why we went down this way, we found some papers, this one by Ngoc Nguyen, and if any of you are here and like talk to me, I would love to. And I think the title here says it all: matching high resolution satellite data and flux tower footprints improves their agreement in photosynthesis estimates. So this point being that if you can get the right measurements within the footprint, you get sort of better understanding of individual tower measurements. We also came across this paper by Chu, who talked earlier. So, and it has a really great quote: "We advocate that flux data sets need to be used with footprint awareness, especially in research and applications that benchmark against models and data products with explicit spatial information." And since we were setting out, we wanted high resolution, we wanted spatial information. We thought really maybe we need to find a way to explicitly account for this footprint. So as a sort of deep learning person, I was really interested in seeing how much data we can get. And I started hearing that we had these footprints, they changed from time to time. I wanted us to start thinking about a single satellite image, which might only be, every 16 days, not as sort of one data point that we need to try and match, but instead of a static set of data points that every half an hour might have a footprint that samples a different set of pixels. So we don't have just one data set for 2 weeks. We actually have sort of a different set of pixels based on this image every 30 minutes or so when we can match the tower data. So since our aim is to get sort of pixel level predictions, we are looking to build a machine learning model that kind of does 3 things. So we want to use our Landsat pixels to kind of tell us what's there. Then we want to use environmental data like incoming radiation, temperature, on the half-hour measurements to kind of tell us what the flux is. And then at the same time, we want to understand what pixels we want to pay attention to represent our flux footprint. So those are 3 things we're going to try and do. So how do we do it? So we built this sort of 2-armed machine learning model. So the first kind of arm up top takes multispectral satellite data, approximately every 16 days, puts it through an algorithm to predict flux prediction. So essentially every pixel gets a flux prediction. Then simultaneously, we take sort of wind, temperature, site characteristics like the tower height. We make this trainable attention model. And I'll tell you a little bit more about each of these arms in a little bit. Try to say what pixels do we pay attention to, and then we combine the two, essentially just multiplying them together and taking the sum to get kind of an average tower prediction measurement. So we're going to try and simultaneously learn a footprint model and a flux model, along with a little bit of a kind of process because we have the sun and temperature changing. So how did we do this? We started with our data. So we used as much of the AmeriFlux data as we could. So we started with all the AmeriFlux base sites. We required they had these set of variables. And I think in bold is the tower height was kind of the metadata that's probably the most challenging for us to get. So we lost some sites because we couldn't find that height data. Then we required overlaps with Landsat 8 and 9, which gives us data from 2013. And we're left with about 216 sites and about 450 site years. Then for each of those sites, we go to our Landsat data and we take every scene that we can find that overlaps that site. We take all 11 spectral bands, we add in channels to account for angles and a quality mask to account for whether or not a pixel is marked as cloudy. We put the tower at the center of the image, and this leaves us about 45,000 scenes. And the note, every time we have a cloudy pixel, we replace it with like the previous pixel, the previous non-cloudy pixel. So we always try to say, what can we say about this piece of land with the most recently available data that we have? Then since it's a machine learning method, we want to do some tests on data that's independent, not used during training. So we have these 2 sites. So a future test, take the last year from each site and we withhold it from training. So you kind of think we're going to try this model on land that we've seen before in training. Then we're going to take a test site, which we group everything by IGPP code. In any group that we have more than 5 sites from, we withhold 20% of those sites as test sites. So using on a brand new area, the models have never seen before. So going to a little bit more detail. So how does this flux prediction work? So we start with all our Landsat bands. We add in shortwave incoming radiation, temperature, relative humidity, and we put it through a multi-layer perceptron. So a very simple machine learning model here. It just gives us, for every pixel and every sort of environmental condition, a single pixel out for the flux prediction. And then we repeat it for each pixel throughout our entire 128 by 128 scene. So you can kind of see on the right, we go from a false color image on the left to a sort of flux prediction where blue is drawdown, red is emissions. And then for our footprint prediction, we want to do something very similar, but before our model had no spatial information. Now we want to look at various spatial information. So we put in an X and Y coordinate, and then we put in the wind direction, the wind speed, the height, and the U star. Put that through a multi-layer perceptron for every pixel, and we get an attention weight. So an attention weight is just a value between 0 and 1. And so if it's 1, it means you should completely pay attention to this pixel. If it's 0, you should ignore the pixel. And if it's in between, it's kind of a mix. And so an example of the trained result for an average sort of tower is on the right here. And you can see my mouse circling this little dot in the center. We cover not a huge number of pixels for the average tower, but a fair number of pixels in the middle of the image. So this is exciting because, to be clear, we didn't tell the model it needed to pay attention to the center of the image. So it doesn't know if the tower is in the left or the right. So it had to learn that the towers are in the center. And then if we kind of blow that up above and overlay kind of a first principles calculation of the footprint on top, we get the scales are very similar, but there might be some differences from pixel to pixel. And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to learn this from scratch is this sort of the best flux prediction model that we have, given the data that we have for every single one of the sites. So coming into results, so I said we were doing it every half hour, which we are, but we can also then integrate it to daily, monthly, and yearly. And we start with an average R squared on our future and test sites of kind of like 0.5, 0.6, and we get up to sort of 0.7, 0.8 for our future sites, it's monthly and yearly, 0.6, 0.5 R squared for our test sites. And then on the right, what I did is I replaced the tower data with prism data, so estimates of the incoming radiation, temperature, humidity from prism data, because we might use this in upsampling. And you can see that it kind of peaks maybe more at 0.6. So we definitely have progress we can make with better sort of local condition data. And when we break this out into IGBP code, you'll kind of see that the sites we do the best on are these sort of ENF. Wetlands have this kind of interesting grouping between sites we do really well on and sites we do really poor on. One of these sites we don't do particularly good on is EDN that we'll see on Friday. So we can do some sleuthing. But this is just to say that, so we have this method, it learns tower footprints. The errors seem to get better as you aggregate to higher time scales. So we think that we're kind of on the right track here. Test data are kind of similar. The sites we do the worst on are the sites that we have the fewest amount of data from, some that we might not expect to be able to do very well, like water bodies. But I'm really interested if people have ideas that we can move those up, data we can add. I would love to talk to you about it. And then, coming back to our original goal, like what we want to be able to do is do upsampling at sort of high resolution to give people clear sort of accounting of the flux across all of the organ. And so we can kind of do this anywhere we have Landsat. You can see examples sort of the Earth going through respiration and drawdown on a daily cycle, and then an integral of that just showing most strong drawdown throughout the coastal forests with emission sources mainly due to the clear cuts across this swath of Oregon. So conclusions, so we developed a deep learning method for training pixel level CO2 flux predictions that directly accounts for measurement footprints. We also have this data-driven footprint model that's based again on the information we have available. We're kind of interested if we can extend this from a footprint model for all the sites to specific site level footprint models, see if we can account for anything that's not accounted for in the global model. We started with Landsat data, but we think the same method could be used with higher resolution planet data. We're currently interested in things like uncertainty, and as I mentioned before, we'd like to be able to give people as much information as we possibly can to represent sort of the fluxes across their land. So really interested in soil properties, microbiome properties, or anything else that you'd love to talk to us about. We'd love to see if we can put it into our model somehow. So thank you.
Thank you. To keep us on schedule, we're going to go straight into our next talk. Because our next event starts in 10 minutes, and we want to make sure we leave plenty of time. So please welcome Arman Ahmadi from UC Berkeley.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's put it back here. Today, I'm going to talk about an interpretable machine learning approach to analyze the water availability's impact on thermal optimality and temperature tipping points of terrestrial ecosystems using AmeriFlux data. So we know from the literature about the photosynthesis or productivity relationship with temperature, specifically air temperature at different scales. From leaf scale to ecosystem scale, we expect a unimodal concave relationship with a maximum, with an optimum value of air temperature, and to diminish photosynthesis or productivity after that tipping point. But we also know that it's not all about temperature, it's multidimensional and it's complicated. So, and specifically water plays a crucial role here. So our idea was to use a process-based interpretable machine learning approach to investigate thermal optimality and temperature tipping points of terrestrial ecosystems multidimensionally, to have a look at other dimensions as well, and to analyze the effect of water availability specifically. Also, we wanted to have a look at the trends of air temperature at AmeriFlux sites that we use data from. So we used over 100,000 daily data samples from 108 AmeriFlux FluxNet sites. We looked over the growing season only from May to September, and we also used ERA 5 data from 1981 to 2021 for trend analysis. So to have a better understanding and better comparison between different climates, between different ecosystems, we did a categorization of the AmeriFlux sites. Okay, sure, no problem. So yeah, we categorize the data based on the climate, based on the wetness index, and based on the plant functional type. Wetness index is specifically important because we are looking at the like instantaneous water availability effect, but we are also interested in the long-term effect of water availability. So this is our model. This is a process-based model, machine learning model, but based on Jarvis photosynthesis model. So Jarvis model uses light, temperature, ambient CO2 concentration, and stomatal conductance as the inputs. And what we use is air temperature, CO2 concentration, shortwave radiation, and evaporative fraction. We use evaporative fraction as a direct measure of soil and atmospheric water availability instead of vapor pressure deficit and soil moisture like separately. And our machine learning model is an XGBoost model. We also used Optuna for hyperparameter tuning of the machine learning model. And what model predicts is photosynthesis, daily photosynthesis, grams of carbon per square meter per day. This is an interpretable machine learning approach. So this is what I'm trying to let the reviewers understand of the paper, that we are not interested in like maximizing the R squared here, but we also want to make sure that the model gets the trend of photosynthesis. And so we just had a look at how model works, and it works decent considering the amount of information, the amount of the number of inputs that we provide to the model. So to have a look at this photosynthesis temperature relationship, we used two model agnostic interpretation methods. The first one is partial dependence plots. Partial dependence plots basically take the average effect of one input of one random variable on the prediction of a model. But the issue with partial dependence plot is that it's based on marginal distribution, so it's pretty sensitive to correlated features. So we also used another method called accumulated local effects, or ALE. ALE is basically takes the integral of partial derivatives of a model with respect to the variable of interest. But in terms of machine learning models, because they are not like differentiable, it boils down to summing the finite differences. But still, it is pretty robust in terms of correlated features. So we used these two methods in parallel. Because we used partial dependence plot, we wanted to make sure that our results are not contaminated by the effect of correlation between input variables. And we had a look at the Pearson correlation between different variables at different climates, different wetness index level, and different ecosystems. And we found that the correlations are not super high. The maximum correlation is around 0.5. So we are still on the safe side of using partial dependence plots. So this is the results of the feature importance, the inherent feature importance of XGBoost model. It's pretty interesting in terms of comparing the competing effects of air temperature and water availability. As you can see here in water-limited regions, water-limited ecosystem, water-limited climates, evaporative fraction is the main driving factor of photosynthesis and productivity. But on the other side, on energy-limited regions or where water is pretty abundant, like wetlands, this is air temperature that drives the photosynthesis. This is what we expect, and this is what we quantify with the data. As I said, we are also interested in the tipping points of air temperature in terms of ecosystem productivity. So this is the results of two-dimensional ALE. As you can see, we found this similar to these unimodal quadratic-like functions, but not always. And another thing that is important here is that it's more of an optimum range, not an optimum value in terms of like photosynthesis. This is another main difference between like beaning and averaging the data and using machine learning based approach. We also wanted to see the combined effect of water availability and air temperature. So we did it through three-dimensional partial dependence plots. So the third axis, the z-axis here, is the daily photosynthesis. And one interesting thing here is that in water-limited regions and in dry ecosystems, we see more of these horizontal contour lines showing that evaporative fraction is the level of evaporative fraction is what really determines how much photosynthesis is going on in those ecosystems. But on the other side, in energy, where water is readily available, like in wetlands, we see more of these vertical lines showing that the level of temperature is what drives photosynthesis, basically. So having a look at the results of the trend analysis, on the left side, you see the z-values of the Mann-Kendall test, all of them for 108 AmeriFlux sites that we used in this study. All of them are positive, showing an increasing trend of air temperature. And the blue circles show the values that are statistically significant at alpha equal 0.05. So we see this warming effect at the sites. And also on the right, you see that the distribution of maximum daily air temperature in 2 of 3 AmeriFlux sites with long time series are shifting toward higher values. So we see this effect of warming, but we cannot say for sure with this analysis that it is gonna make these ecosystems to tip their temperature tipping points, because there is also acclimation going on. And so we need more evidence to say for sure what's gonna happen in future. The paper is not published yet, but feel free to reach out to me via my email. My Twitter is @hydrodatology. I would be happy to be connected with you. I probably follow you back. I would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
We have time for one quick question.
So since nobody asked a very specific question on your talk, I thought I would offer this, I guess, comment and larger question about data science as a whole and machine learning as a whole. These tools are really valuable in their predictive capacity, but I find in your model and the last talk, we have to limit ourselves to just a few variables that every site measures. And I wonder if you're aware of, or if this is a sort of active topic of research of developing a machine learning model that when you have an estimate of, a driver, you use it. But if not, so that's really something, a machine learning model that's very flexible toward missing drivers, or able to develop relationships using only a subset of the drivers when they matter, because wet sites, wetness doesn't matter very much because they're always wet, right? But wetness becomes extremely important for something like a dry site where we saw the rain pulses. So just wondering if you've thought about that or have any comments on that.
So basically, the question is about what we can do with like missing variables.
Not so much missing, but able to incorporate. I mean, there's such a diversity of drivers, and that some matter very much at some sites and very little at others. And so if we're looking for a machine learning technique or just techniques in which we have a model that it can apply across many different ecosystems, we need to be able to handle that sometimes the variable matters and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes we don't have a variable that we think that matters, but we still want a prediction.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment and question. This is basically what goes back to this trade-off of accuracy and generalizability of machine learning model. And this is what I've been thinking about for so long time, that this is what we have as a problem, that if we want our machine learning models to be generalizable to new instances, to new sites, to all the sites, to global like level generalizability, we need to sacrifice a little bit at least of the accuracy of the model. But if we narrow down the scope to one site, we can get very good machine learning models, super accurate, but we'll lose on the generalizability side. So I don't think I answered the question, but I just echo that that's an important thing to note working with data science. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.